ExpaTalk is a podcast run by Natasha Tynes and Zyad Rasheed, two journalists of Arab origin based in North America. The podcast focuses on issues related to Arab affairs and of interest to Arabs across the globe. We interview entrepreneurs, artists, luminaries, and those who are working on exciting endeavors. Join us on this adventure as we talk to those who inspire us and make us think differently about the world. The podcast streams live on YouTube and can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Hello and welcome to the show. Today is ExpaTalk's time, and this is Zyad Rasheed from Ottawa, the federal capital of Canada, welcoming you. And we're about to start a very exciting episode and conversation with a very renowned entrepreneur, Mr. Ray Dargham. He's with us now in the studio, and we'll be talking with him about various issues related to entrepreneurship. But before I go any further in the interview, I want to give you some idea about who Ray Dargham is. Ray is a media and technology entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Stepp, the company behind Dubai renowned Stepp conference, which he started in 2012, right off college. Following the growth of Stepp Conference, Ray turned the company into a fast-growing new media startup in the Middle East with digital content platforms, stepfeed.com and yallafeed.com, and the ambition to become the largest and most influential new media company in MENA. Ray also founded Spiderfrogs, a next-generation technology provider that helps local and global brands to integrate their business with new technologies. Ray is a FERD or Fred's List honoree and was featured on Forbes 30 under 30 magazine cover in 2018. So this is in a nutshell our guest Ray Dargham. Before we go further, let me invite to the studio Natasha Tynes, my co-host and producer in this show. So hello, Natasha.
Hi, Zyad. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Are you excited to meet Ray today?
I am. I've been following his work for years, and so I've been following him on Twitter for a long time. We exchanged, every once in a while, we exchange a couple of Twitter DMs. So I'm really excited to get to talk to him, learn from him. Such a young, inspiring Arab, and it fits it fits the theme of our podcast ExpaTalk. So really excited to talk to him.
I've been looking at his journey. It's such an amazing journey, right? Of young age, as you said, as soon as he graduated the American University in Beirut at a very young age, even before the college, he started entrepreneurship programs and started hiring people and making businesses. So such an amazing achievement in such a short time of his life.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get started. Let's bring him to the studio.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Ray Dargham. Hello, Ray.
Hi,
Hello,
Ray.
yeah,
How are
Natasha.
you?
Great to be here. Thanks for
Hi,
having me.
great to meet you. You're joining us from Dubai in the United
Yeah,
Arab Emirates. So,
it's
welcome.
evening for me here.
It's evening. I know it's 9 p.m. It's 1 a.m. Here in
1 p.m.
PM, yes.
1 p.m. Sorry, in Canada and Eastern time of Canada and the United States. So Ray, after our short conversation that we have off the air, I learned that you have started entrepreneurship at a very young age. After you graduated the American University in Beirut, you were born in Lebanon and raised in Lebanon, and as soon as you left Lebanon, you went to Dubai. So let's talk very briefly about the entrepreneurship journey that you had in Lebanon, which formulated the Ray Dargham that we know today.
Yeah, definitely. It all started actually in high school, and I was very lucky to stumble upon a program which is called Injaz. And I think for a lot of students, and when you're young, one thing that kind of like you need is perspective. And sometimes just getting that perspective is very difficult because as a kid, as a student, you're growing up in a certain environment. You can't really, you're not very exposed. I think now things are a little bit better with the internet and everything that's online, but back then you don't really have that much access. We had some kind of internet, not the same way it is today, but perspective was extremely important for students, which I kind of lacked until this opportunity came along. So it was in high school, and this is an organization called Injaz that kind of came to our school one day, and they said there's a program which is called company program that we want your class and school to participate in. We were very lucky because actually they had another school that had just dropped out. So we were kind of like a backup school for that program, and they came last minute and they wanted a school to come on board. And then basically what happens is that as a class, you form kind of a team, so you become like a company, and you elect a CEO, management, and employees. So we're like 22 students in class, and we became like a team for a semi-virtual, semi-real company. So you create a product, you come up with they give you like a capital of maximum $800, which is not a lot, and then you have to come up with the product, and then put a business plan, create marketing, do different things, and within 3 months you have to show progress and traction, and then after that you compete on the local level, which we did within Lebanon, and then if you win, which we did within Lebanon, you go to the regional competition with other winners from other Arab countries who went through the same program. So this was like a really life-changing experience for me. I was living in denial for about 3 months, completely forgot that I was in school. Would show up to school with nothing in my backpack other than the booklet that the program gave us and a laptop. And I just like was not thinking about anything that has to do with exams or school or anything like that. So I was completely into this program along with others from within the class as well. So that was my first kind of entrepreneurial experience. And after that was done, which was was a 3 months thing, we won and went to Oman. We competed with a regional competition. We got stuck in Oman as well because there was like the small like civil clash within Lebanon for like 7 days, if you remember, back in 2008. So we got stuck there. We couldn't return. The airport was shut down, so we were stuck in Oman. Then we had to go to Jordan. So that added to the drama and the experience. But then after that, when we returned, graduated from school, and kind of things went back to normal, and went to university. So that was the last year of high school. Went into AUB, and then went back onto the same path that everyone is on, which is try to get good grades. And at that time, the kind of like the most successful you can be is to get a job in consulting, especially in strategy consulting. So that was what everyone's like kind of like aim was to do afterwards. And I fell into that kind of, I don't know, I don't want to call it trap, but kind of like that path that seemed obvious, until my the year before my last year, when I was doing another internship with one of the management consulting companies, and I decided that that's not what I'm going to be doing. And when I returned, I ended up in my last year at AUB not updating my CV or resume even once, not even looking at it, and then starting Stepp out of AUB in my last year.
Okay. And then 2011 was a very pivotal year in your life. Can you tell us why?
This was the year that I started Stepp when I was at AUB, and it was really challenging because on one hand you're kind of within the space that you're in, your social circle, everyone is doing the same thing, and then you're doing something completely different. So it seemed a little bit like the crazy one. And at that time, entrepreneurship was not that heard of. It was not something as kind of sexy or whatever it is. Today it was more unheard of in one way or the other. So going and pursuing that path. Everyone saw it as, okay, you don't have the experience, how are you going to do it, and so on. My family was actually quite supportive, but more the social circle in university was kind of thinking that, okay, you should go a different path. So that was challenging in one way, but at the same time, to look at it from a different perspective, and that's there's two things that kind of kept me going. So one is that when you're a university student, you live on very little. You don't have much to lose. Your opportunity cost is not that significant. So you don't have a massive salary somewhere. You're not already used to a certain lifestyle. So continuing to be on a minimal kind of income and right off university is actually not, it's much easier than trying to leave a job later in your life to start a business, especially when you have responsibilities, when you're used to a certain lifestyle. So that's one. The other thing is that, what drove me initially to kind of pursue that path is kind of the realization that looking back later in life, I'd want to see that I've lived an interesting story, and it didn't matter how successful or if I failed or not, but what mattered is if I've lived an interesting story. And that turned out to be a good way for me to keep going, because when things were going well, then it's perfect, you're happy, everything is going fine. But when things went south and things weren't working, in my mind, it was kind of, okay, now the story is just getting more interesting. So it's kind of like I'm writing a book. so that was a good way to, when things are not going well, to overcome them. And it was just between me and myself, obviously. But you need that sometimes. So you need a way to justify things and within your head and to keep you going.
Yes. And then you started the Stepp conference, and everything started from there. Can you give us also now an idea about what you do and what benefits have you reaped, or the users have reaped from your company and entrepreneurship programs and the startup programs that you've been offering?
Yeah, we were very lucky in some sense, especially in terms of timing. And sometimes, a lot of businesses and things that you do are a lot about hard work, but also a big part about timing, and that's where kind of luck plays in. So we were lucky in that regard in terms of the timing, and the reason that is because around that time, so 2011, 2012. The startup ecosystem in the Middle East was just starting to accelerate. At that time, a few years before that, there was the sale of Maktoob.com. That was the first big exit in the region. And then from that, there was some initial startups that had started. Very few funds were created, and then that kind of whole startup ecosystem was starting to be created, essentially, because before that there really wasn't much. And we were there at the perfect time. I can tell you that in 2013, I think, we have something where startups showcase. In 2013, we really struggled to get 8 startups to showcase. The year after that, 2014, we had 80 startups showcasing from the region. So
Yeah.
between those 2 years, that was partly because our efforts and all of that, but also was part because it was perfect timing with the ecosystem really starting to grow, and we were also playing a part of growing that ecosystem by bringing everyone together, startups, investors. There's a lot of startups that were able to fundraise, to able to meet investors, meet partners, in step at the annual event that we do, or other events that we do throughout the year. And then things really kept on growing massively after that. The following year, we had about 150 startups. The year after that, we had 200 something, and now we have annually we have more than 300 new startups every year that showcase at the event, and tens of billions of dollars, kind of like represented in terms of funds and from all over the world, from VCs to private equity and so on.
Do these startups only involve people from the United Arab Emirates or residing in the UAE, or it involves entrepreneurs around the world?
It's a lot. It's a lot around the region. So we're very focused on the MENA region. UAE is, if you look at the stats within the region and the ecosystem, UAE is the biggest market in terms of the number of deals that happen, the number of startups that are there, followed by Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Those are the other two markets that are big, but also startups from the rest of the region, from Jordan, from Lebanon, from even countries that are in other emerging markets, so Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, some from Eastern Europe. So we're really serving the emerging markets countries, and that's where a lot of the startups come from.
So if Natasha and I, for example, want to start our own business, like a company in the media or translation or any businesses in this field, what can you offer to help us?
So as Step, we're primarily the companies that participate within Step are highly scalable technology companies, which can be as well new media companies, or even it can be in any field. So they technologies in every field, but it's meant to be highly scalable technology companies that need a certain amount of funding to accelerate their growth and take market share. What Step can help you with, so we have multiple things that we do. One is within our events, you can come and showcase, you can take part in the event. We do a lot of meetings and matching between founders and investors, between founders and mentors, a lot of mentorship sessions, a lot of workshops take place. Also between founders and accelerators and incubators. So a lot of these, again, didn't exist back in 2012, or were very nascent or minimal at that time. But right now, so that's what forms what we call an ecosystem. So you've got all the startups, you've got the investors, you've got the incubators, the accelerators, the programs, the corporates as well. So you've got a whole ecosystem of different players that are creating this ecosystem. And in many ways, we're starting to see a lot of successes coming out of the region. So you've got the famous Kareem exit, and Kareem, for example, the founder of Kareem was at Step back in 2013 or 14, when Kareem was I think 20 people in the company, and then years later Kareem is where it is today. And then you've got also a lot of other success stories that came out of the region. We're still very small compared to other regions and big tech hubs around the world, but I think we've come a long way in the Arab world and the MENA region, especially with the UAE and now other kind of countries as well pioneering the space.
Do you get any support from the government of the UAE?
We do, yes. So a lot of them are our sponsors, our partners. Generally, they're very active. They're active in various ways in providing licenses, providing ease of doing things, providing certain subsidies as well, and support to initial startups to get started in the first year or two. And they listen as well, because regulation is in some areas, deregulation is important to make things easier for companies and the barriers to entry easier. And that's something that, the UAE government have been very supportive. Other governments, I think, around the region have also been. We have Stepp Saudi, for example, as well. So we've done Stepp Saudi twice already, and this year will be the third year that we do it. And Saudi is massively growing in terms of the entrepreneurship ecosystem. We've got companies of massive scale that are tech companies within food delivery or e-commerce or fintech and various other spaces.
Nice. Natasha, do you have any questions for our guest?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. So I'm gonna start by the definition of you call yourself a media company. I've seen a lot of interviews with you where you define Stepp as a media company. And speaking of media, when I first used to follow you, I used to follow Stepp Feed, the website, and there was lots of good content coming from the Arab region. And then all of a sudden, I noticed that the website turned into a newsletter format. So my question is, did you pivot because of COVID and you had to cut down, or was that a strategic business decision? And is the future now a newsletter? And what is the business model? Because so far the newsletter is free from what I saw. So how actually do you, what's the business model that you have?
Yeah, no, a lot of this was pre-COVID, and it was a pivot that we were planning to make before COVID even started. So take you a little bit back. So after the conference and our events business was growing, I've been always passionate about media, and we really wanted to create a platform that speaks to Arab millennials in the region, young Arabs, and speak their language, and that was really kind of lacking in many ways. So around that time of around 2015 is when we launched two platforms. One was Stepp Feed, and the other was Yalla Feed, and it was kind of seen as the BuzzFeed of the Middle East, and that's when we went and fundraised as well from investors, and we grew massively. So we went from 0 to 70 million video views at some point in the region. We had more than 5 million unique users on our websites between Stepp Feed and Yalla Feed. But the whole media space as well evolved massively in the last 7 to 8 years. So there are multiple ways to look at it. So one, how kind of like social media and the social platforms played into the success or failure of content creators and publishers. So ourselves, we're media publishers. Definitely, we were kind of hooked on the Facebook drug of virality and shareability, and we got to a point where we realized that a lot of the content that we're creating was just to get views in one way or the other. Then at the same, and these companies, so even BuzzFeed and some of the other players in the US, also, as they were growing, they could kind of like their plans shifted in many ways. Then it turned out to be that the audience and people really want credible, trusted news. And after the whole emergence as well of fake news, and with around the time Trump took office, and the whole world was talking about fake news, and people really became more conscious about fake news, and that's a problem that's not even solved today. At the same time, what we happened to go into is we sold Yalla Feed, so we had a buyer for Yalla Feed, so we ended up selling and Yalla Feed was the bigger platform, because Yalla Feed is an Arabic platform, so we were creating tons of entertainment video content that's mostly entertainment. And we ended up selling Yalla Feed. And after we sold Yalla Feed, there was still Stepp Feed that had about 1.5 million unique users per month. We targeted Arab millennials and third cultured Arabs like yourselves. So Arabs who are either living in the region but are a bit westernized, or living in the West or outside, because it's an English publication. generally a little bit more open-minded, a little bit more kind of liberal, and we had an amazing followership from within that base, but we really didn't have two things. One, we didn't have control over the audience, so they would come on the website and leave, but then we can't really build like a longer relationship with our audience, because our website, you come on, you don't log in, nothing, you just read an article and you leave. You can engage with them on social and so on, but then we were kind of dictated by the social media platform algorithms, and what would get us the clicks and the views and so on. So we didn't feel the freedom to write what we really wanted to write for our audience, because we're always kind of controlled by what will get us more clicks, because the more clicks you get, the more whatever successful you are. So all the writers, everyone would kind of like, as much as everyone wanted to avoid that, we'd end up in that trap. So the newsletter kind of space felt really as a more one, gives us control over our audience, so we can build a loyal, trusted audience that really just enjoys reading what we're writing, and clicks don't matter. Maybe the open rate or how much they open the email would matter, but it's really allowed us to focus on writing like content that matters in many ways, and that our audience would like, and to measure loyalty of the audience and trusted audience. So this is the reason why we shifted, and this model has been driven by a lot of other players in the West, such as Morning Brew and others that have proven that people want, and they're using their emails to kind of curate content, because for a lot of people now it's difficult to where do you get that trusted content from. There's a whole debate as well. Many people are going to other individuals, writers, journalists, who are leaving publications that they write for, which are media brands, and building their own kind of like, as individuals, their media brands, and people are trusting them more. So that was the reason for our shift, and so far it hasn't been a year since we shifted, it's been a few months, but we've seen amazing feedback. We really worked a lot on, I don't know if you guys received the newsletter or not, but
I do. Yeah.
we spent a lot of time on the design, on the and then daily on the content. We put in a lot of editorial best practices within the content that we do, and send it out, but still with that humor, with that touch of step feed that step feed always had, which millennials relate to in many ways.
So is it like, are you familiar with the Skim newsletter, which is in the US, they target millennials? So are you trying to be like the Skim of the Middle East in a way, if you're familiar with that? And how are you making money? What's the business model?
Yeah, our inspiration have been more Morning Brew and the Hustle. And I'm not familiar with the Skim, but I'll check it out. And the monetization is basically sponsorship, which is what we do. Would like to have maybe a paid newsletter. We like the idea of keeping it open for the public and not having a paywall behind it, as long as we can sustain the business. But currently the model is sponsorships, and I think there's a lot of potential. Brands are getting more and more educated as well around newsletters. They were viewed differently before. Brands saw, especially in the region here, a newsletter as email shots. I'll send out an email shot, whatever. But now they're starting to understand that there is much more than that in newsletter. You can really deliver very quality content to quality audience within a newsletter. Like the Morning Brews newsletter today reaches more than, I think, 2.5 million people on a daily basis. So with a very high open rate and engagement with this audience.
Oh, another question is about your conference. So the Step conference, I noticed that you have like different branches. So you have like one in Saudi Arabia, one in Dubai, and I'm assuming that you personally are heavily involved in the organization of the conferences, and it sort of reminded me of the concept of TED, like a TED conference type. And is that where your vision is to have like a TED conference, like, but with focus on Arab entrepreneurs and luminaires and artists? Is that where you're going with this?
Not right now, but I can tell you that initially back in 2011 when I started it, and also the name Step kind of was a little bit inspired from TED and
Yeah.
TED as a platform. Not so much today though. It's I'd say Step is more similar to South by Southwest or the Web Summit or such events around the world. Because it's a major focus on startups. So it's our conference, especially our physical conference. The last year, we've been doing a lot of virtual conference, but it's not just the content. So we've got so much going on. So the startup showcase that I was talking about that takes place. We have a lot of tons of meetings and matchmaking and things that happen. And then you've got a pitch competition. You've got also showcase of exhibitors. So it's a whole day, more like a festival of various things that are happening at the same time. And now we've got sub tracks as well. So we've got something called Step X, which focuses on future tech, on smart cities, autonomous driving. We've launched a lot of electric cars from our event and platform. For example, I have Step Money, which focuses on fintechs and digital payments and so on. So there's a lot of different angles, and now we're outside our main event. We're launching other either industry or like you're mentioning, geo-focused events. We have Step Saudi. We have planned to expand to another market later this year. About 2 weeks ago, we had an event called Food X, which is the only kind of like food tech event in the Middle East, and the food tech space is massive in the UAE and in the region. And the region is viewed as one of the capitals within the food tech space globally. So we launched a food tech conference called Food X, and it was really, really good. People really liked it. We had an amazing group of speakers and companies take part, from cloud kitchens to aggregators to restaurants to businesses and startups in the agri-tech space, creating amazing things within agriculture tech and so on. So we plan to go into more verticals and expand into more geographies within tech startups and all the sub verticals that are within it.
Thank you. So I have one more question before I pass it on to my colleague Zyad. Okay, so I've been doing a lot of research on the mindset of entrepreneurs and the habits of entrepreneurs, and I can summarize my research as follows: entrepreneurs, and I want you to tell me if you have any of these habits, or some of them, or all of them, to see if my research is going in the right direction. Entrepreneurs read a lot, between 50 to 60 books a year. They exercise daily. They meditate. They surround themselves with smart people. They have a mentor, and they practice the art of the Greek philosophers like Marcellus and others, which is the Stoicism, which is looking at difficulties, from a positive perspective. So since these are some of the habits that I studied, so I wanted to see what kind of habits do you have, and if my research is going in the right direction.
Yeah, this is a lot of things that from, if you're researching probably other articles and media, that's what they'd like to tell you. I think it's very far from how it gets portrayed. In many ways, I mean, myself as an entrepreneur and also dealing with a lot of other founders within the region and globally, it's really very different than that. Now, there's some truth to some of these things that you mentioned, but there definitely it's really, really difficult to do all of the things that you mentioned and sustain them regularly. And I can assure you that most founders don't do that. And the reason why is because entrepreneurship is way less glamorous than it seems or it's portrayed. It's the reality of it is that many times, especially early on when you're starting business, is just extremely long hours, sometimes putting in 14, 15 hours a day, not doing anything else, sitting on your desk or your your couch or whatever for a while. And that's a lot of it is that more than kind of having daily you wake up, you do. I mean, then there are periods where you try to implement these different things, and personally, from my experience, it's really phases. So sometimes you have to kind of like find time and exercise, get your body in shape, but then sometimes you just can't, or you're just not in the mindset to do that, or you just have a lot of things going on that you don't end up doing it. And then same thing for reading. So there are periods where you kind of like need to take a step back and do a lot of kind of like either reading or not only reading. So podcasts, like I listen to a lot of podcasts, watching, it's about like what content you kind of like get in, but it's sometimes as a entrepreneur help, you need to take a step back and look at things from a bigger picture. But sometimes it's very difficult to do that. Again, it's an extremely demanding kind of job and lifestyle. It's way less glamorous than how a lot of the media portrays it in many ways. So it's not easy at all, and a lot of it is there's a lot of failures that don't get kind of communicated as well or shown. Like if you go on LinkedIn, like my LinkedIn, because I follow a lot of things within the tech space, every other post is this company raised 100 million, this company raised 10 million, this company raised whatever. So this in some way is good, but it's also like can be bad for a lot of people, because this is only like the smaller percentage of what happens to all the other startups. A lot of startups and most startups end up failing. They don't even see the light, but no one covers these because who wants to cover a failed? I mean, also failure and the whole, the hustle kind of like idea is also done within the media. No one likes to fail. So even failure is great and not to learn from things, but no one wants to fail. So it's not great in that regard. So it's great when you learn from it, but still no one wants to fail. So there's different ways, but definitely it's very difficult. Like the things that you listed, it's I would say most startup founders like don't do all of these on a regular basis. They try, and each person does different things. So
what do you do from them?
I go through phases again, and
Okay.
The most I relate. I read a book back a long time ago when I was in school it's written by Andrea Agassi, who's a tennis player. I think I can relate a lot with kind of like my lifestyle to him, because he had like phases where he's doing intense like he's an athlete, obviously, so his work is exercising. So a lot of time where he's doing that, and then sometimes where he's playing video games and eating McDonald's, and then he but that's his time to kind of his way of relaxing. I do eat McDonald's sometimes, but that's not the point here. But it's about phases. So it's you kind of go into phases, and I believe in the kind of like rule that you can only do 3 out of 5 of the main things in life, do them well together, which are work, sleep, exercise, family, and friends. So these 5 things, you can really only do 3 at a time and do them well. So I tend to kind of shift between these things. At the moment, I would say I'm doing a lot of work, try to get enough sleep, and family. So that's those are the 3 things, but not doing much exercise or friends. So, but you shift. Like a year ago, I was doing a lot more exercise. maybe not as intense, work during certain times. It depends on the phases that you go through. Sometimes the job is just too demanding that you need to give it what it needs, and some other things, you might not. Like for one thing that really matters for me a lot personally, I need like my kind of like 1-2 hours in the morning where I'm just doing more like thinking, doing more maybe a bit of reading as well, or listening to something. That's my time where I kind of like need to disconnect and really think of the bigger picture stuff. So for me, that's more important than anything else. Like I'd rather get that than exercise or meditation or whatever. So it really depends on each person, and I think each person has their own way of coping of things, and there's no one formula or one rule of kind of like following things.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ray, I am mindful of the time, and I know we have a lot of issues that we need to talk about. So my next question will be about the social media. It will be the last question on social media, then we move to other topics. And my question is actually of two folds. I'm going to throw everything on you right now and then leave you to talk about it. Social media, as you know, it's a double-edged sword. It has the harm that has been done over social media is more than its benefits, obviously, and everyone agrees to that. So the two questions that I need to ask you here: what is the future of social media, and do we still need social media in our life?
That's a big question.
And I need a short answer.
The big answer.
Yeah, let's see how it goes, guys. I mean, I think whether we like it or not, I mean, I don't think social media is going anywhere. It's going to change in its different shapes and forms, but I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. It really became part of our daily lives and what we do, and it does have a lot of advantages and many ways that it helps us improve our life and do things, but then also it has a lot of negative things that result from it, and that depends on the platform. Personally, I'm me and Natasha know each other from Twitter. Like I'm the Twitter is my favorite platform when it comes to social. Like Facebook, I haven't opened my Facebook in months. I rarely open it. So it really depends on the people, but also I think the values of social media companies are becoming more into question today, and decisions that how much control these not just one company, it's essentially one person that has over so many people, and that whether you agree with it or not, like for example when banning Trump or banning other accounts and so on, it makes you realize like how much control in one person like that is. Now they have a lot of pressure to make the right decision at the same time, but it's still a lot of control that people are given up to in one way or the other to the big companies, the big tech companies that are there. So at some point, I would imagine there will be more regulation by government and the people, government that is elected by the people, essentially, on social platforms and how they make decisions. Hopefully, I mean, technically, like you want things to be more decentralized. You don't want them to be more centralized, but at the same time, you think they are decentralized and realize they're actually very centralized. So when you have one person taking a decision over, something that affects, the whole world, and that person is the CEO or whatever of that company, then you realize that no, it's not decentralized. It's extremely centralized within that one person. So with government kind of coming in, I don't know if that would make it more centralized or more decentralized. I don't know how you'd make it more decentralized. That's something that
Yes.
to think about. But there's definitely a lot of issues, a lot of gaps within platforms that will need to be addressed, and they're becoming more dangerous with time. Some platforms are deal with it better than others. They have better principles, better way of going around it. Some others don't.
Yes.
But yeah, these are my 2 cents.
Yes.
Mm.
Now, let's switch gear to cryptocurrency versus government controlled currencies. I know you have a considerable experience in this regard. And this is a topic maybe Natasha and I were both interested in it, and also our audience, they need to know a lot about it. So you are one of the right persons to talk to about this issue. Uh, what is the future of cryptocurrency, and are they going to replace government controlled currencies? Like in the future, am I going to see myself paying in bitcoins, for example, for things that I buy uh, in,
Yeah.
in Walmart, for example?
Yeah. So again, this is very similar, same kind of discussion to the previous point we were talking about centralization versus decentralization. So currently, currencies around the world are centralized within the central bank or the Federal Reserve, for example, for the U.S. dollar, and they kind of control the supply of that, interest rates, and so on. Now, initially, cryptocurrencies came about as a way to, using blockchain and using a distributed and decentralized kind of, structure for these currencies, rather than it's kind of like by a lot of anti-government, anti-centralization kind of people. Now, after a few years and of cryptocurrencies and now Bitcoin and Ethereum and a lot of other even currencies that you haven't heard of have market caps of billions of dollars. People are starting to question again how decentralized and how much effect can one person like Elon Musk, for example, have on these currencies, and if they go up or they go down and so on. Then the other point is that a lot of the idea behind digital currencies is that people will use them for transactional purposes. So if you're buying a car or you're buying a phone or buying something, you'd pay with digital currency, and then you'd have less transactional fees. You'd have less middlemen in between you and the person you're trying to pay, who take fees out of all the money that you're paying. So this was another kind of reason. So decentralization and kind of like using it for transactional purposes, and both of these are in question now because one, it's not yet clear how centralized, decentralized the various cryptocurrencies are. And the second thing is that they're not really, until now, they're mostly been used as investment driven by a lot of speculation, a lot of various things by people versus like being used for a transaction. Still, though, in my opinion, that there's definitely a lot of potential for digital currencies. I really don't see, in years from now, I don't know how long that will take, but I only see a future with digital currencies, that where people use the digital currencies to transact and do business with each other. But what will happen between now and then? What will the role of government be again? So at what point is government going to step in and regulate? Right now, it's not as necessarily regulated. And then a lot of these cryptocurrencies are driven by communities and on Reddit, on different forums, on different groups that make certain decisions around how these currencies should behave and how they're kind of controlled in one way or the other, and there's a lot of details that within them. But nevertheless, I would say there's definitely a way bigger advantage of using digital currencies in the future than using our normal currencies that are controlled by the government. But there will be regulation at some point. What will happen between now and then is interesting to watch. Yeah.
What about in the Arab world? I mean, would cryptocurrency or blockchain work as a concept in the Arab world, or will it be controlled? You know, as we see, many things get controlled, even though they have, I guess,
Yeah.
the promise of being decentralized, but things do not always work this way in the Arab world.
Yeah, I mean, so far it depends on the markets you look at. Like in the UAE, for example, they've been supportive to digital currencies. There was a new currency called Dubai Coin that was launched recently. People were buying into it. I think one of the real estate developers recently also allowed people to buy. You can buy a villa with Bitcoin. So there has
Interesting.
been some adoption to it and interest in it. There are a few companies as well, local companies that you can. Trade is getting licensed as well. Some of it are getting like Bit Oasis, which is one of the startups that is a trading platform for crypto here. Recently, I think they got their license from the Abu Dhabi Global Markets Authority. So there is openness to it, but again, with government, even in the US or around the world, it still has they still don't know what to do or how to go about it. So, and it hasn't reached a stage where it's really hurting them enough that they have to do something about it, and that's governments in general. But at some point, they might, and most likely they will, and that might not. Some, like with social media and with this, in my opinion, at some point you need some form of kind of like regulation is not always bad. So it's not always as a lot of people portray it that things have to be like deregulated totally and so on. Many things won't work without there is a role for governments in general, whether in the US or in different parts, but because sometimes when you let things just like on their own, also people don't behave necessarily in the right way, and people do things that are their own interests and are they're all commercially driven. So you might end up with a complete mess as well if things are completely regulated. So a mix is good. Naturally, crypto and blockchain is about decentralization, but then which is great. So currently the currencies that we deal with are extremely regulated, right? So any like the euro, the dollar, all of any smaller currency, they're 100% like regulated by the governments that issue them. The Federal Reserve decides how much dollars they need to print. Like last year, there's tons of dollars being printed. So it's definitely when you have like more a algorithm or kind of decentralized way of how that gets controlled, it's healthier. But you also have to be careful from speculation and people's behavior
That's true.
going in and you
On
have
Reddit, on
and
Reddit
communities, right? So
specifically.
we all saw
Yeah.
what happened with
GameStop. With GameStop, yeah.
and AMC, and because when people gather in communities, they can be very dangerous. They can be very good. They can drive a lot of good, and they can drive bad. So it's and that's a form of kind of control as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I personally don't have any questions. I'm mindful also of the time. I don't want to keep our guest for more than 1 hour. Natasha, do you have anything to ask our guest?
I want to end by asking you about the future media, digital media trends. We talked a lot about media. You mentioned one which is moving to like a kind of community based conversation, like a newsletter, but as a follower of trends, and especially if like an Arab entrepreneur wants to get into the digital media sphere, what they should be in the look for, what they should focus on, what is the future out there when it comes to digital media?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things happening within the space, for sure. And you can look at it from different. I think about it a lot, and there's a lot of ways, different angles and perspectives you can look at it. So there's a general shift to people wanting to follow individuals,
Okay.
versus media brands, and then trusting into, and that's through podcasts as one platform, people having their own Substack,
Substacks, yeah.
people having their own Patreon community and whatnot. And that's good in a lot of ways. Now, I've read recently about someone that had a completely counter argument, which kind of like open up my mind a little bit around it, who was saying that when these journalists are in a large publication, they're under certain check marks, or kind of like they're being checked in some way by the editor, by the values of or certain editorial principles and so on. And what he was saying is that what's happening now is that a lot of credible, like, the journalists earn their credibility from writing for, I don't know, the New York Times or whatever, and then leaving and taking that audience and with them, and then closing it within a paid newsletter that no one has access to unless you're paid, and that journalists can be still claiming the credibility of whatever they were, but now they don't have an editor to check them, of anything. They can basically say whatever they want, and people will believe them. So that person is making that argument, and it's very interesting, and it could be true in many ways. But at the same time, there's the counter argument of also large media brands and companies being not being very necessarily like editorially ethical or whatever, and ending up with a lot of stories that are not fact checked, or just like it's not an issue of fact check. It's
agenda driven, like
agenda
driven, yeah,
or played around. So basically, the issue with social now and is that you can twist a topic and make it seem like, especially with the headline, like, and making people focus on that. A lot of people share headlines without even reading the article. That's another major issue. So a journalist would like cover the facts and the details, but it's hidden or buried all the way down in the article. But their headline focuses on one little part of the article, which misleads readers but gets clicks or whatever. So again, going back to the clickbait, which not clickbait, but it's really bad when journalists are rewarded based on clicks, and then all their kind of incentive is to get clicks. So they would write whatever in order to get the clicks, because they're getting paid based on how many clicks they get. That's essentially driven by also ads, because the more the clicks drive higher ad revenue. That's why. But now there's an interesting shift to paywalls, which has a lot of benefits in that regard. That once media is being paid, big media companies don't care as much about clicks. They care about make sure that their audience will renew their subscription, and they're getting quality content. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things I think going on. How it will end up, I'm not sure. But I think.
So besides the personality, what other trends do you think there? Besides like the personality focused media, what other trends do you see out there?
I think the biggest driver is still about trust. So this is the biggest issue and the biggest thing that's going to define media for the next, it's defined part of it in the last decade. That's going to define media in the next decade. It's the big challenge of people's lack of trust. People don't know what to believe anymore, and because of technology and because of the various things, you can really twist anything and people will believe it. I mean, AI today artificial intelligence can You can have a news that's all of it is based on artificial intelligence producing fake news or certain kind of news that people believe. They make it look like it's actual news. It's the pictures, the headlines, the way it's positioned, the way it's done, and you can't blame people for believing it or clicking it or sharing it. And then you have all these armies of bots and so on controlling like certain narratives online. So I think the biggest issue is trust, and that's people's biggest kind of like question mark, because things are decentralized, but they're also manipulated in many ways, and people fall for it. So I think everyone is trying to search for, okay, who do I trust, and what's my most credible source of information and news.
Ray, if you don't mind me asking this last question, because this question emerged from the things you've been saying about clicks and follows and who follows you and how many clicks you got. You're touching upon a very sensitive issue, especially when it comes to journalism and honest journalism, because so many journalists now are falling in this trap. And the first thing when they ask you about your programs or the things they produce, how
Yeah.
many clicks, how many followers, how many subscribers, how many people are watching you, as if the quality of your work that you're presenting is measured by who is watching and how many people are watching and how many subscribers you're having. So which is more important, the
Yeah,
quality or the quantity? That's the thing, it's a very sensitive issue, and I want to hear your opinion about it.
yeah.
What's your input?
The size of the audience always mattered. I mean, even if you go back, 40, 50 years ago, like with TV shows or newspaper distribution, the size of the audience, that's what matters in media. It's about eyeballs, right? It's how many eyeballs and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, the difference is that the way it's driven, for example, with a show, is that you build that audience over time. So people like your show, they watch it, they trust it or whatever, and then they become part of it, and then they watch it regularly. Now what happens because of the internet and how things can exponentially like go viral and so on, that happens more on a kind of like a specific article rather than a show or a journalist. So people will, it's just more like it could be one thing that goes viral, and you never see that, read for that journalist again. So that drives that idea of, I can just get clicks and views for this one piece or this one story I'm writing, rather than, and that's how it's changing with podcasts, with newsletters, with certain things where it's more about, okay, let me deliver quality, trusted information, news, and so on, and I'll build this audience with time, and more people will trust me, more people will become part of the show that I'm doing or whatever I'm doing, and then I can monetize that. So that's kind of like the difference, with which a lot of it again is driven by social media, by social media companies, and in some way you can't blame the journalists or how that trickled down. Now in a lot of ways you can, because I think journalists and not just journalists but content creators in general, or professional content creators, need to apply a certain level of ethics and certain level, like they should have certain principles and fundamentals that they stick with.
Yes.
But I think it's heading in an interesting direction. That's really good. So personally, I love podcasts. I love good newsletters. I love good kind of like communities. But like, for example, the counter argument I was mentioning earlier is interesting as well. Like until I read that kind of like analysis, I didn't think about it this way. But with everything, you're gonna have like a positives and negatives. You have to see
True.
overall what's better. And people, it's also about people becoming more educated and
Yes.
knowing how to navigate and tell kind of like the true from the false as well.
Yes, yes. Ray, I think we finished all the questions that we needed to ask you. Natasha, if you don't have anything to our guests, I think it's time to thank you very much and say goodbye.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you very much, Ray. It was a very intellectually stimulating conversation. I personally learned a lot from this conversation. I actually took notes. I'm gonna go back and do some more research.
Same here.
On the,
Also, yeah, it was great. Thank you very much.
there's
Same
a lot
here.
there's a lot to think about, and maybe hopefully in the future we can continue the conversation. Best of luck, Ray, and thank you for coming to our show, and please, let's stay in touch.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Take care.
Thank you very much, Ray. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.